I mean, I got to know Gideon and Paul, Peter, and it just, I'm amazed at what's being done. So my background is I kind of lit up in the faith around age 40, just because, you know, schooled in the Catholic faith, Catholic school and everything, but didn't know what the heck was going on until I actually had a chance to have my best friend's wife want to become Catholic, and then in high school he left the church. Now he's coming back. Uh, we've been friends now for 59 years, and so anyway, as my wife was the sponsor and I started going, I started hearing, and it just lit me up. I mean, is this stuff really all true? Because if it is, this just blows me away. Because I'm a scientist, okay? I loved science. I got a brother PhD in physics, brother PhD in geology, another brother that also geology. Science is it for me. I mean, that was it. So I was a zoology major, 2 years of chemistry research. I loved chemistry, uh, but I had to make a living. And back in those days, in the early 70s, you weren't going to do a whole lot with that degree. So I went to dental school, became a dentist, studied all the ologies, biology, cellular biology, inorganic chemistry, organic chemistry, uh, it's, embryology, physiology, pathology, everything. Never once did I question whether God exists. All it did was kept leading me to the truth. So tonight, what I'd like to do is actually take apart an article that was put out in the Journal of the American Medical Association. Did Jesus Christ, this guy, did he really exist, and did he really die? Okay? Did that really happen? And so you had a forensic pathologist take a look at this. So tonight we're not talking about theology. We're going to talk medicine and basically history, because we don't have a body to do an autopsy on, do we? Not around that I know of. I think it ascended to heaven. But did this guy, Jesus Christ, what did he go through? Let's walk with him to the cross, okay? Is this reliable, what we're talking about? Yeah, it is. There's so much out there. Ancient writings, whether they're Jewish, whether they're Roman historians, and you've got Christian historians. There's so much out there. Now, the greatest text that we're going to look at is in the New Testament. The 4 books, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, give us a lot. They really do. But there's also the Shroud of Turin. And whether that was Jesus or not, I believe it was. But I don't really care for this discussion. It shows us a lot what the Romans did to execute somebody. And it is horrific. And so that's what I'm going to try to drive home tonight. I can tell you the historians, they're not going to mean anything to you. They certainly didn't mean anything to me. The only guy would be like Flavius Josephus, okay? We've all heard of him as this Jewish historian. But there's, the Gospels, which is kind of like a cornerstone for this, because, the 4 of them agree so much. Their ethics and everything is beyond reproach. That's totally accepted. The other thing is how closely they wrote this to what had happened. It wasn't like somebody was writing about this 200 years later. So this is pretty amazing. That kind of brings it into text. The other thing that gets questioned, did Jesus Christ really exist? Because, with the Enlightenment movement, which is now called what? The Progressive Movement. Okay? So one of the things you have to rewrite is not just to academics, you got to rewrite history. There is so much historical evidence that this man called Jesus Christ actually existed. Fact. Done. Discussion over on that one. And then, there's historical, archaeological stuff that we can look at where we can actually look, go into the tombs and see what happened to these people that were crucified, executed, by the Romans. So when did this take place? Most likely in 30 AD. Okay, and so what happened in 30 AD? We have the Last Supper we put on Holy Thursday, the Passover. Friday would be the day that it'd be the Passover meal. Jesus executed then on a Friday, and then we already hear that they had to get him off the cross because starting at sundown, you got Sabbath, right? Okay, so where this all lines up is really about 30 AD. Big deal, one way or the other. I don't know, but I throw that out to you. Before we get into this, we start thinking about this guy Jesus. What was he like physically? Strong. You better believe it. Because how many miles those guys leg in a day sometimes? Like 20? That's a lot of miles. That's pretty good. I mean, my wife and I, we'll do 7 or 10 miles, hikes, up in the mountains, 10 miles or something, which is pretty good for old people. That's pretty good. So what we know is Jesus probably was a pretty fit dude. Okay. We have never heard about any maladies he had or any physical problems. So we're coming into Holy Thursday with somebody that's in pretty good shape. Okay. So things start happening in his mind. And we got to remember that we've got this union of 100% man, 100% divine person. I don't understand it. It's a mystery. That's fine. I'll let it go there. But it's a tenet of my faith that I believe that, we had this hypostatic union. So things, he realized, just like when he told his mother, my hour has not yet come. Well, this night, his hour has come for what he knows is going to happen. Judas already bugged out, right? Passover ends. Now, if you take a look, do you have the little map on your handout? So take a look at that, and you see the upper room, which is down, on the whole kind of quadrangle of Jerusalem. You see that kind of on the lower left. So follow the arrows. Number one, you come out of the gates, and I was just there in 2019. So you come out of the gates, you're going to kind of go downhill, Kidron Valley, which is now kind of a highway Jesus was walking on. And he gets over there to the Garden of Gethsemane, okay? A lot of olive trees and stuff. And he knows what's happening. So he's asking his 3 closest guys, man, Peter, James, and John, can you guys, he always pulls them away. Remember, those were the guys at Mount Tabor. He took them up and showed them, check it out, God, okay, don't forget this because things are going to happen. They didn't realize that, but things are going to happen. He takes those 3 guys, pray with me that you don't undergo the test. So now he goes and he starts praying. And what do we hear about his sweating? He's bleeding, right? So he's got this hematodrosis that it's called, okay? He's bleeding blood. Does that really happen? It could be this other stuff called chromadrosis, but the sweat is yellow and brown. That isn't what was recorded. Could be a stigmata. That'd be the other thing. That isn't what we heard. We heard that he was actually sweating blood. So what can happen if you could ever possibly get under the stress that this man, God, must have been under that night, knowing the culmination of what was just about to happen, praying to his Father that, can this cup pass me by? And literally the capillaries will open up enough that not just water, serum can go through, but the red corpuscles can go through, hit the sweat glands and come out through the sweat. Now, okay, one of the things is, did he lose a lot of volume of blood with that? Probably not. It's like, if we had somebody come in, either a tongue or something going on, and they're bleeding. Yeah, it bleeds a lot. I mean, it's a muscle. But, take a tooth out, patient's calling you up, doc, I'm bleeding a lot. A few drops of blood with a bunch of saliva looks like a ton of blood, okay? He didn't lose probably a lot of volume of blood, so he's doing okay that way. But he's sweating blood. It's probably a cool night because now you're talking somewhere between 9 p.m. and midnight. And he's sweating and it's cool up there. I've been up there, and he's going to get chilled. The other thing in the process that happens with that is his skin becomes very tender, very what we would call friable. It doesn't take much to damage it. Okay? Store that fact away. So now the guards come and they grab him, and they're probably blindfolded him, spit on him, slapped him around, punched him around with their fists. So now he gets hauled off to the palace of Caiaphas. Okay, so you follow that back, and it's right above where the upper room is. Okay, pretty nice place. Been there. A lot of ruins. But they take him. Caiaphas, freaks out. Oh, man, blasphemy. That's it. We got to take this guy. They can't do a whole lot with him that night. If you go to that palace, you will see there's a church. And what's kind of weird about the church is you look up and you go, they got a well just off to the left. It isn't a well. You look down there, it's a hole into the ground. They would tie their prisoner up, get a rope, and drop him down. And having gone down there to pray the rosary, it is a room that's probably 15 by 15 all around, and probably about 16 feet high, a little hole in the corner for a guard to look through, totally dark down there. I only can wonder about the urine, the feces, the rats, maybe old food scraps down there, but they weren't feeding him or anything. He's spending the night there. Have we ever thought about that? And I got to show you, this doesn't mean a whole lot to you, but when I was saying the rosary and I'm down kneeling and I'm feeling the floor and I'm thinking, Jesus could have spent the night here, right here on this floor. And I picked up a little pebble and I took it, okay? And so I got this. Holy Thursday night, I go to sleep with this in my hand. Jesus, I only wish I could have been with you that night to comfort you. I don't know what was going through his head. I mean, he knows the cup isn't passing him by. I mean, that game's long over. Now he's getting ready, and he kind of knows what's coming up. I mean, he's been around there enough with the Romans. So he's probably not eating anything. He's not drinking. He's not sleeping. And about 6 a.m., they wake him up, right around daybreak, let's say. That would be 6 a.m. So then they take him, and you know what? Let's haul him off. And you see number 3, they take him over to the temple area. Actually, you got to see Pilate. And you guys know the story. So Herod's in town, so Pilate kind of begs off and sends him to Herod, which is kind of cool because Herod wanted to meet him anyway. And Herod, I can't find anything wrong with the guy. Send him back to Pilate. Pilate's like, I can't find anything wrong with the guy either. But crowds yelling. And the Jews know they can't execute him, but that's what blasphemy calls for. So let's spin the story. Okay, it's not, what does a Roman care about blasphemy? So, you know what? He's declaring he's a king. So, okay, so now Pilate yields. We're going to execute him. So there's 2 things. You're going to be crucified. You're going to be scourged first. They got to beat you up. And so that's what we're going to talk about next. So they take him over to, you see that fortress of Antonia. There's still some ruins left there, but it is the Church of the Flagellation is there. And that's kind of where, Pilate was, and then, sends him down the road to Calvary. Let's see, where am I here? Um, so he's probably walked about 2.5 miles now and been pushed around, beaten around, skin still kind of, you know, ready to just rip at the slightest thing. So now we're going to go ahead and scourge him. So just like the next picture shows of how they did that. And actually in the Holy Sepulchre Church is supposedly the pillar that they tied Jesus to. So they would tie you like that, strip you down. So your back, your buttocks, and the back of your legs, you're standing there. And they had this thing, it kind of, had kind of a short whip handle to it. And then it could be the leather straps, and you guys probably heard this. They would have iron balls on it, like, make a bead out of it. And they could put multiple things on it. So maybe a couple metal balls, maybe, maybe a sheep's bone on the end, nice and sharp, right? Yeah, really good. And so the way to do that, it's like throwing something. You want the nice snap of the wrist, or in tennis, when I was playing tennis, that type of thing. So you take that whip and you go around and you give it a good snap. And then you really get that whip to it. And you don't go ahead like it shows. You don't. So there's one guy usually on one side, one guy on the other. Jesus would be standing there. You don't go to this side. You come across to the other side. You catch the meat, because otherwise you just go in the center of the spine. Yeah, you hit the spine, but it's a little protection there. You got the bone. But man, you go to the side, and Jim Caviezel in the movie, the plate didn't come over far enough on him, and he got hit. And I think it broke a rib or just knocked the wind out of him. Does anybody recall what happened when Caviezel got hit like that? But it stopped things for a while. And that was just off of one little hit, one little thing going around. Do we know whether Jesus got how many lashes out of this? We don't know. But now you're ripping the skin. What's right under the skin? Okay, you leave the epidermis, now you get to the dermis. What's there? Nerve endings, right? So now you've kind of peeled some skin off. It's not feeling too good. And you know what? Let me go deep, rip, and I'm going to go through the muscles. And you start going through that and ripping muscles, bleeding, things are going to start quivering. So you can imagine his muscles in his back are kind of quivering because they've been ripped through. And not a pretty sight, but losing blood, really losing blood, kind of a splattery thing. We do have a protective mechanism that if we're in a knife fight or something and I get slashed, I don't bleed quite as much because my body goes into this defensive mode. So this is kind of happening too, but still a tremendous amount of blood loss. Would he now be in a state of almost circulatory shock because of this? It's very possible. So his BP is going to come down, his blood pressure is going to drop, his heart rate's going to go up. He's kind of going to get pale, almost to the thing of looking like he's not getting enough oxygen, okay, because of the circulatory shock. Maybe even getting a little blue. And he's getting cold, he's getting clammy. And remember, he's very susceptible because of what just happened to him in the garden. So he's having a tough day so far. And was he extremely whipped? Yeah, scripture, and we'll not go into that because I got to keep this short. So it was extremely whipped. The Romans were great at judging just how far to take you, because how far they took you, they could kill you just with the flagellation. That'd be easy enough to do. But and they got fun out of it. I mean, they were having a good time. Don't take that away from them. They were pros at what they were doing. So they knew that the crucifix was coming next. How long do I want you to hang on that cross? Okay. If they really whoop you, you could only be maybe 3 or 4 hours on it. If they didn't do too much, guess what? You could be hanging for 3, 4 days. So they were very skilled at what they did. Um, when he gets done with the scourging, a couple things could be said. One, that the intense pain, the blood loss, and he's just in a. If we were to take him at that point, take him over to St. Al's to the trauma center and say, you got to take care of this guy. He's going into either serious or he'll come in at a critical state. That's how bad off he is already. And so let's take him and let's put a robe on him. And, think of some really, nice woolly material. I'm trying to think of who has something. Okay, Gideon, like your shirt, okay? It's nice and kind of got that, fuzziness to it. So you take that, put it over everything, and then, because they love to mock people. This was part of their procedure. So God forbid you take the fun away from the Romans on their executions, right? And you go ahead and they made the crown of thorns. And at this point, they were so good, they could rip into arterioles, which are little small arteries, but they're still little pumpers. So, blood's coming out. And I think if you look on the shroud, there's a pretty good stream coming down right there. The crown of thorns went into an arteriole. And if you ever get back to Sacramento, that's where I came from, it's one of 2 sites, national, I don't know, call them the shrines or something, to the shroud. Incredible 3D stuff they got there to show you what it all looks like. So if you get back there, please go. But so they give him a stick. The scripture says a reed, but it's a pretty good stick. And then they take it and they beat him on the head with the crown of thorns. I mean, the pain from that's got to be incredible. Back in California, I had like lemon trees. I had a bunch of citrus trees. And, pruning the lemon tree, I hated because, the thorns were fairly long. You get in there. I was a mess afterwards. And I always thought, okay, I can take it on my arm and stuff and just a few little hits. But what is this? Because it wasn't a crown like we think. It was an actual cap that went over. And then you're taking a stick and you're beating on it. So there's all this pain. Was Jesus helpless? Who said no? All right. No, yeah, put it on Peter. You're absolutely right. He was not helpless. He was God. I don't know if I would have the mercy not to turn the tables on everybody, that I wouldn't want to zap them and I am done with this. Check it out. It's all back in one piece. There are no cuts. There are nothing. Just keep thinking about that through this. At any moment, you have the greatest sin of all happening. You've got the creature trying to kill the creator. Boy, I don't know of a bigger sin than that one. That one's kind of right up at the top. Well, let's talk about crucifixion. How am I doing on time? Okay. So to crucifixion, did I give you the thing with the crosses? Okay. So there's 2 crosses. The one that just looks like a T, that's called the Tau cross. That's not what we usually, look at. Usually it's a Roman cross, kind of like this. But actually, we kind of think it was the Tau cross that he was crucified on. Doesn't really matter. Why do they think that? Because remember, somebody takes a little bit of sour wine on the hyssop stick. Hyssop stick's probably going to be 10 to, maybe about 24 inches long, something like that is what they're estimating. And to be able to reach him, he was probably on a lower cross. And so Jesus got the robe on, the crowns on, and everything else. So what do? We've had plenty of time for that material to get with blood, to dry and everything. Now they're going to strip it off. We're going to open those wounds all back again. Gosh, that's got to feel absolutely great. Now we're back to bleeding again. So the crucifixion, the whole thing came through the Persians, went into Egypt and Carthage. The Romans learned from the Carthaginians. The Romans didn't invent it, is what I'm saying, but they perfected it. They knew how to get maximum agony, maximum suffering. They were so good at what they did. I mean, it's disgraceful, but amazing. So as you see the stipes or whatever is kind of the pole, and those things were permanently mounted. And then it was that patibulum, I think they call it. And do you see the weights on that? 75 to 125. You guys ever lift like railroad ties? And I'm thinking, that's got to be like a railroad tie. And they usually tied your arms. They set it on the nape of the neck. I've just been scourged. And now you're taking this raw wood and you're going to set it there? That's got to feel great. And then they did the procession. And so he's walking, I think, about 600 yards. I remember walking the way of the cross, stores on either side. They wanted to make a public display because who were they crucifying? Foreigners? Insurrectionists? What else did they do? They did a few other people, but it was slaves. Slaves were the other ones. But Roman citizens, like St. Paul, right, didn't get a cross. They just behead you. So, but in special circumstances, they would do it to non-Roman, or they would do it to Roman citizens if they were like insurrectionists. But you're carrying that cross bar, and it turns out he can't carry it. History shows that he has to have somebody else kind of carry this for him. So they grab Simon. But now you get to the crucifixion site, and they do, they take off all your clothes. Usually crucified naked, but it kind of depended on the local customs as how it was done. But here you are on, the patibulum. They take you and they literally throw you onto the dirt. So now you've got all these wounds that are getting all the dirt into, and that's not feeling great. Plus you're back on that wood. They take your arms, and unlike the Passion of the Christ where they dislocate, pull so far they pull you out of joint, they don't do that. They actually leave a little flux in there. Okay? And they could tie you, but the Romans really liked the nails. So I think you can see that the nails are about 5 to 7 inches long. They're square shape, kind of like our early nails here, same thing. And that gets to be very important in the pain category. One of the things that you'll see is some crosses you see may have like a little seat area. That probably wasn't around in Jesus' time, and neither was there a place for the feet to be put. Okay, so the first thing was, we got to nail you down. So you've got all the fingers coming in, but you've got 2 rows of carpal bones. Okay, you've got the big median neurovascular bundle, and then you got the ulnar, and I think the ulnar does little finger half of the ring finger, right? Okay, good. It's been about 50 years since I dissected a body, and so anyway, you've got that. So those are the 2 big nerves. So most of the time they went right into the carpal bones because that could support you. If they went in here, your weight, you would just pull out of it. Okay, to just rip. So they went right in there with one of those nails. And they could pound it and pound it and pound it. And up at the top, by the head of the nail, close to about a ½ inch, which is a pretty good little thing. So they either severed that median nerve, which wouldn't feel good, or they pushed it to the side, which would probably feel even worse. But what it's going to do is it's going to cause your hand to claw in. Okay, so it's probably going to look like this. So here you are nailed, and pain's got to be excruciating. Does bone have nerve endings? Does bone hurt? No nerve endings in bone. So like we do an implant, we'd really just have to worry about surrounding tissue. The bone has no nerve endings to it. But the tissue right over the bone, called the periosteum, the tissue around the osseous, all right, extremely painful. You want an idea of what that feels like? Take your fingernail and jab it into your gum. Get a good idea of what that feels like. Terrible pain. Okay? So you got these nails that are rubbing against, because you got those little carpal bones. It's rubbing against those too. Pain has got to be excruciating. And so now they take you, and we're assuming that, the tau cross. Okay, we'll just go with that one. It's a mortise and tenons thing. So the patibulum has a hole cut in, and the top little member of the stipes has a little piece in it, and they kind of go together like little Lincoln log things or whatever. So they're going to grab him, and they're going to set him up into place. He is literally hanging by his two arms through the nails. Excruciating pain. So now they're going to take the legs, because we're going to fix those, right? So his legs are not straight. It's a little bit like the crucifix here. They've got to be bent. They've got to be lifted up a little bit and turned to the side, one over the other one. And it's they knew exactly where to go into the feet too. And they put those nails one on top of the other. So there you are. Somewhat of a bloodless procedure, believe it or not, except the bleeding still taking place from the scourging, because things have kind of been opened up again. So now you're getting into this kind of hypovolemic shock. The volume of blood's so low that, organs could start shutting down. They're just, it's not going well. Things are not feeling well. If you ever go, when you get home and over your doorway you got that wood, put your hands up there and just hang yourself for a minute and try to breathe. You're in this inhaling position, and it's real hard to exhale. About the only thing you can do is a little diaphragm trying to push some air out so you can pull some air in. So there you are hanging, and you need to take a breath. So what you have to do, because your arms are out like this, you've got to push with your feet, straighten your legs out, which rotates your feet a little bit on the square nails. How is that with the periosteum and the nerves? Now you push yourself up, but now you got to rotate your arms to be able to do it. That's not feeling good at all. And you take a breath and the pain's excruciating, you slump back down. So it's like, how long do you want to play this game? How long did Jesus do it? He got 7 words in, right? He made 7 statements, 7 last words. So he was doing it. Just extremely, extremely painful. And then, the taunting and the jeering still went on. It was, just a terrible thing. So there you are on the cross. They would post guards there. So things would be happening to you up there. You've got all this nice, exposed, beaten up flesh. So I think the insects would be coming after you. Maybe some flies lay some eggs. Certainly got birds of prey that would come, start pecking at you. You've got other predators that'll come. Normally, they left you hanging on that cross until the animals had had their fill of you. You could be taken down, though, if you had family members that would go to the Romans and ask for your body. They would allow that, but you had to be dead. So how does Scripture say that they made sure that you were dead or you were going to die fast? Yeah, break your legs, right? Because then you can't do what? You can't push up. So Jesus never got to that point, because when he gave that last yell out that it is finished and he bowed his head and died, that was a certain significance. Everybody knew at that point he was gone. He definitely died. But and we'll talk a little bit about the speculation on how he died. But imagine what this man has gone through now. Nothing to eat or drink, been beaten, been scourged. His friends abandoned him. Absolutely none of his guys were around. Everybody except for John, his mom, and the mother of Judas was there, right? And then there was another Mary. So there were actually 4 of them at the foot of the cross. Otherwise, everybody else hightailed it away. And how that must have been for him. You go back to that night where I talked, and it was cold, and they're saying, in the courtyard of Caiaphas's palace, they had the fire going, kind of stay warm and stuff. And, to see Peter bail on him after he just says, no, I'm good. I'll always be with you, Lord. No way. It's a pretty tough thing that he went through, even mentally. So when you're looking at what went on, he had to have the CO2 buildup happen in him because he just wasn't able to push up, to respirate normally, even abnormally, to keep himself going. So he had dehydration. When they crucified you and they started with the nails in the arms, I forgot to mention, they offer you a little sponge with some myrrh on it, right? A little gall, they say. A little bit of an analgesic. What did Jesus do with that? Refused it. Didn't take it. No analgesics, man. This guy's going straight into it. And so exhaustion, asphyxia. So, just suffocation really is probably the route that had happened. Although I told you with the kind of the yell at the end, could have been that he had, because he was undoubtedly would be having cardiac arrhythmias going on and stuff. Things are not going to be beating normally. I told you, like organ failure going on. It could have been his heart just exploded. That's a possibility, or some huge cardiac event that it was like boom, that went on. So we don't actually know exactly how he died. But we do know one other thing. The Romans, to ensure death, came along with their sword and they knew exactly how to go up in between the ribs in the intercostal space, come up in, and what came out? Blood and water, right? Actually, it probably would have been water first and blood, but Scripture will say blood and water. Uh, they say medically they're putting, blood would have gone first because it was probably the most that came out, and then water second. For me, I like to think of the Jews thinking of blood being that life force, and when that blood's gone, it's dead. It's just like on the altar, you got the body and the blood, so what do you have? Death, right? Okay, the sacrifice on the altar, two separate species. You got blood separated from body. Trust me, the person's dead. Okay, and then the priest takes a little bit of the host, drops it into the wine. You got the resurrected body in Christ, right? Okay, so I think the blood may have had some significance. Story according to Ben Pelk on that one. Take it for what it's worth. Think about it. But at this point, when he's dying, you probably had some of the pleural space, so the space around the lungs building up with fluid, and around the heart, the pericardial tissue, the little sac building up with fluid. So when they went through, they indeed probably, got through the lung, the pericardium, and then they hit, right into the heart, and then the blood came out. And so they were excellent at doing that. They knew exactly where to go. And there wasn't anything they weren't pros at, I'll tell you that. I don't know if there's too much more we really need to go into. So I'm kind of going to end with this, and then you can open it up for questions. But so we talked about it, maybe a multifactorial death, that it was the hypovolemic shock, exhaustion, asphyxia, and maybe acute heart failure. But here's the key, here's the kicker of the article. However, the most important feature may not be how he died, but rather whether he died. Clearly, the weight of historical and medical evidence indicates that Jesus was dead before the wound to his side was inflicted, and supports the traditional view that the spear thrust between his right ribs probably perforated not only the right lung, but also the pericardium and heart, and thereby ensured his death. Accordingly, interpretations based on the assumption that Jesus did not die on the cross appear to be at odds with modern medical knowledge. Why was this an issue about Jesus dying? What about Gnosticism? Let's start with that. Gnosticism. Created world bad, spiritual world good. Which is kind of crazy because God created and saw it was good. So I don't know how they got off on that, but they did. So then you've got Docetism, which is kind of a heresy offshoot of that says, from Docane, it means to seem, okay? So Docetism, you think you saw this human being named Jesus, but he was God. And there's no way God would come down and be part of creation and be a human being. Oh my gosh, never be. You saw an illusion. You saw a mirage. There was absolutely no crucifixion. Nobody really died. And then there were also stories that he didn't really die. And so you saw him afterwards. Well, you know what? He wasn't really dead. He didn't really die. So some of this stuff still goes on today. That will be arguments. So I think I'm good on time, right? Okay. Any questions? My question to you, okay, let me finish up one thing. I'm sorry. So what I wanted to say on this was at the Last Supper, Holy Thursday, Jesus says, I no longer call you slave, I have called you friends. Okay? A true friend, and I really can think of two. I can think of my wife and my best friend that I told you about, whose wife became Catholic and from the Baptist church. Uh, a true friend has seen me at my best, but they've seen me at my worst, which unfortunately there's been a few times. And they still love you. They still love you. So Jesus Christ is calling us friends at this point, and he goes through this. Can you do it for her? Would she do it for him? You would, huh? You know what? I wish I could say that I would do that. And Jesus talks about it in Scripture about, about laying down your life for a friend. Would you do it for an enemy? Yeah. I think, and for me, and we were talking about this earlier, it would be very hard to say, let me do that in your place, just to spare a life. I don't know, to be honest with you, I got the guts to do it after knowing what he went through. But for your soul, everlasting eternity, I'll take a shot at it. I might not last as long as Jesus did, but for your soul, I think I'll do it. It's that important. And he does it for all of humanity. Because remember, what happens here is you got God the Father, you got God the Son, and then you've got really it's a circle of love. Then you guys get to the men's conference? Listen to Father Adlar. I'm kind of taking this off of him. So you got God the Father, you got God the Son, and it's love. It's really the Holy Spirit, right? And he sends Jesus down to humanity for redemption. So it's all this redemption going on with us, and here we are down here. And what's that make it possible for our love through the Holy Spirit to unite us back to the Father? Okay, that sanctification to take place once we're redeemed and we accept that. Then it can be our sanctification. And then we end up where we should be, where the first few pages of the Bible are, in paradise for all eternity. So this was, to me, just an incredible 18 hours that Jesus went through, even though he knew a long time beforehand that he was going to have to go through this. Remember, he told Peter, and Peter's like, no, not going to happen. Yeah, hey, get behind me because it's going to happen. So questions, go ahead. You had one.
I was just wondering, what was the first scientific proof that really got you started to just look into all that about Jesus and things like that? You said that really interested you. Was it the OCA process and really
Yeah, it truly was. When I started going, I could go. It was a very small church, that I was present in, and so our pastor taught the classes, and so we still had classes on Sunday, but I started going, and it's like, I kind of brought my wife back. She was on a tennis scholarship. I'd played tennis in college and stuff. And so, but when she was down in Texas, she was down in the Bible Belt. I don't even know if, she's 18 years old. I don't even know if they had a Catholic church down there. So she wasn't going to church until we started dating, and I dropped her off one time at her parents' house, and she says, yeah, I got to get back because I got to go to church. Oh, where are you going to church? At a Catholic church. So it's like, well, maybe we'll start going to church together because I'm Catholic too. It was huge for me. And so she's learning this coming home. I'm the guy that went to Catholic school. I'm supposed to know all this stuff, right? And she was coming home. She's like, well, I got to go. I got to listen to this. It blew me away out of the tub what my Catholic faith was. I had that pearl of great price sitting in my pocket, didn't even know it. And so I started going, and then there was a guy, Father Karapi, did kind of like catechism one Saturday a month, 8 hours, and for a year. And so I went to that and actually took our two best friends with us to go. So we did that, and it caught me on fire. Plus, I got a tap on the shoulder from the lady from RCIA saying, "Would you be a sponsor?" Okay, and you can't say no. Huge crucifix, everything. Hey, got to do this. And so that was how I got involved in it. And then it just evolved that I was in charge of sponsors next year, and then I started teaching. And it's the more I learn, science can fail me because it changes, it morphs. What I learned in dental school is not true now. There's a whole bunch of stuff on that. I can guarantee you I can go back to the first talk I ever gave 30 years ago, pull that out and give that talk today. Faith doesn't change. There may be encyclicals and things that come out from our faith, but I can guarantee you it's not going to change. In 100 years from now, somebody can pick up my talks and do them too. That's going to be fine. It doesn't change. It is the truth. See, in science, I hunt for truth as a thing, a law, right? The trouble in society, law has become their God. See, you don't have a God, it's the law. No, it isn't. That's just the stinking formula. What about the lawgiver? I'm after the truth with a capital T, and it's a person. That's what I'm after. So, anything else?
Was the crown of thorns something the Romans did often, or was that specific to these Christian?
My guess is it would have been more specific to him because they gave the king his crown. But undoubtedly, they were pretty good at doing it. So it may be something they did more often just for the fun. Anything else? We're good. Thank you, guys.